Hey there, Nate Urandi, Orion Training Systems. Hope you're doing well today. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Wearing one of my favorite shirts. So this is from the Cycle to the Sun Challenge in Maui. That's where you start at sea level and go 36, 37 miles up to 10,000 plus feet up Haleakala. Um, that was quite an interesting race. I had forgotten my water bottles back at the hotel where we were staying, and so did the whole thing without any water. Don't recommend that for 3 hours of climbing. In any case, um, so there's been a lot of banter lately about outlier athletes. You know, basically the best at what they do, and we're seeing physical transformations or great leaps in performance here in these latest months. So, question: when you think about your favorite elite athletes or teams, what comes to mind in terms of when you think about how they got to be one of the very best? Certainly, genetics play a part. You know, they work hard, they hit the gym, they're typically coachable, they eat well, they sleep well, they're always showing up. They have the desire and the drive to be the absolute best. And obviously, the list goes on from there. Now, flip it. What are these athletes and teams typically not doing? Well, they aren't riddled with maladies like asthma, bilharzia, a malfunctioning thyroid, low T, and so forth. They aren't lazy or just plain lucky. Uh, they don't eat chicken McNuggets or other, crappy food on a regular basis. They're not food disposals. Um, they don't pull all nighters or regularly binge. They don't ignore their coaches. They don't avoid strength training. And this list goes on and on and on. All this is rational and makes perfect sense, right? There isn't one world class athlete defined as someone who races and places against the very best in the world in his or her given sport who gets to where they're at by doing all the wrong things. And they're typically doing most things right even before they know the difference, meaning at a younger age when they're more heavily influenced by the coaching they're receiving. They don't stumble into greatness. They don't ignore the wisdom built upon decades which came before them. They tap into it, they study it. Largely, they proactively want to get better because the goal is to be the absolute best. Again, it doesn't happen by luck or happenstance. Rocks are turned over, new things are tried, those that work remain, those that don't are jettisoned. It's really simple. It's not easy, but it's really simple. But make no mistake, the process to achieve greatness is largely the same from one athlete to another, from one sport to another. So let's take it one step further. We see athletes who are already outliers quite suddenly and starkly, making huge jumps in performance or in physical stature. Or worse, we see non athletes become the best in the world despite already being fully developed adults. So, the skinny soccer players who have suddenly put on 20 pounds of muscle, yet have never enjoyed even more endurance than ever before. Cyclists going from battling for the Lanterne Rouge in a Grand Tour to winning a Grand Tour or multiple Grand Tours. Runners coming out of this pandemic after fretting about how terrible their training has been through it and documenting that to obliterating their own personal best times and in some cases setting world records. Rugby players like their soccer brethren being 20 to 30 pounds heavier. Um, some woman last fall from, I think it was Bahrain, slaughtering her own 400-meter best time by a second or even a little bit more, and ending third on the all time list behind two doped up East Germans from decades prior. The list goes on and on and on here as well. Shit like this just does not happen naturally. Because if it did, we would have already seen hints of this astounding talent and astounding physical stature earlier on. There's just no way around this. So let's take the bulked up soccer players as just one example. We're told it's because new gargantuan leaps in training, recovery, nutrition were brought to the team by some coaching guru or another, as if some sort of ancient druidic mysticism had been unearthed in a cavern behind a waterfall that only opens itself up to being found once every 1,000 years or some shit like that. We're expected to believe that these hulking specimens neither knew how to spell the word weights or had ever lifted one ever before. We're expected to believe that freely available knowledge on pre and post exercise nutrition, as well as what to do during competitions, had been completely and patently ignored, not only by these athletes, but by those who coached them previously. We're expected to believe that plyometrics and sports bands and structure and training have created monumental leaps forward in stature and in performance. All of this and more in athletes that are already some of the absolute very best in the sport that they play in. All of this and more to generate obscene results. We could pick apart and render ridiculous every single contention by folks who love to believe the fairy tales. But let's just take a look at one: the gain in size in a matter of months. In highly trained athletes, the realistic muscle gain that can be expected is a half pound to a pound per month. Years and years of training have chiseled a body into a uniquely efficient machine to master the task at hand. So, if you were going to look like the Incredible Hulk, then you would show glimpses of that as you grew up. The genetic propensity to be overly muscular would already present itself. You may not be as big as a teenager as you are as an adult, of course. However, you would be more muscular than your peers if that was your propensity genetically and naturally. To believe that hitting the weights hard would allow an adult athlete to gain 20 pounds in a handful of months is completely asinine, and to do so while remaining lean and ripped even more so. We're talking about 20 pounds of muscle, not just 20 pounds here, when the expectation should be a fraction of that in highly trained machines as adult athletes have become. So, believe what you want. Believe it for the horseshit reasons that you've been spoon-fed. Enjoy the fairy tale, because that's exactly what it is. Because that is what top-level sport has become and has been for decades. Complete and utter fiction with its media darling heroes and detestable villains, with its wizards full of mystical wisdom, and with fabricated virtue as something to which we should all aspire. And tragically so, I must say. So I'll leave you with that, and as always, happy training.